Hey everyone, Tom here again. I wanted to take some time today and address some rumors and some things that are going around on the internet and in the nerd world that I live in. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about Spider-Man 3, the upcoming sequel to Spider-Man Far From Home, the third solo Spider-Man installment in the MCU starring Tom Holland. So, a little bit of background, real quick. Spider Man has had a very tumultuous history when it comes to film. Back in the 90s, uh, Marvel was in a really rough spot and they ended up selling off the movie rights to a lot of their characters. One of these sales was Spider Man to Sony. At this time, Marvel didn't have their own film studio, which is why they were doing this. And so over the years, there were a few different uh, superhero movies that are not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, movies that are being made by other studios as opposed to Marvel. And in recent years, Marvel has been slowly reacquiring the film rights to a lot of their characters, like X Men, Fantastic Four, a lot of others. So, Spider Man had their original trilogy directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire as Spider Man. These three films came out in the early 2000s, and they were very successful financially and critically. The third one, we all know the story of the third one, which I personally love, but that's for another video. We have had three different live action actors and versions of Spider Man over the last 20 years. And as it stands right now, there seems to be an agreement between Marvel and Sony where, well, it's kind of messy, and anybody who tells you that they know exactly what the agreement says is lying. If they don't work for one of these companies, and if they're not in a position where they would actually know, a lot of it is speculation. But there have been rumors lately about how for Spider Man 3, or potentially another installment in the MCU, we may be getting a sort of live action Spider Verse where we will have Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire all together. Uh, there have been a lot of articles online. Google, as of this recording, says that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are both returning, and the Wikipedia page for Tobey Maguire says that he's in it. However, the Wikipedia page for the Spider-Man 3 movie doesn't even mention Tobey Maguire. I did a search on that page for his name, and there's nothing. He's not listed there. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and there are a lot of different things floating around. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I think this is going to happen eventually. Maybe it won't happen in next year's Spider-Man 3. It might. But this is why I think that it will happen eventually. I think that they have been working towards this for a number of years. I have always believed that the fantastic animated film Into the Spider-Verse was kind of a test run for this, to kind of see how general audiences would take to multiple Spider-Men in one movie. This isn't really anything new. This has happened in comic books before. The idea of a Spider-Verse with different versions of Spider-Man from different dimensions and that's been covered in comic books, that's been done in video games. So it's not really anything terribly new. But when going into a movie, when you're talking about film is a very expensive business venture, especially something like a superhero movie. And so I really think that putting out an animated film that really did a lot better than I think it was expected to do. I think that was a way for Sony to kind of test the waters and see how people would react to this concept. The idea of a multiverse was introduced in Far From Home. I don't really want to get into that. I don't want to like spoil that movie, but it's kind of hard to not spoil it if you haven't seen it by now. And since we will be talking about the upcoming sequel, these are some mild spoilers. Maybe more than mild. But anyway, the idea of a multiverse ended up ultimately being a lie in Far From Home, but that idea was kind of planted and kind of presented to members of the audience. On top of that, the kind of stinger, as they call it, of Far From Home shows that J.K. Simmons was reprising his role as a more of a like a tabloid conspiracy theorist, Alex Jones type take on J. Jonah Jameson. Of course, he famously played that role in the Tobey Maguire movies. And so it's interesting that he is returning in that role. On top of that, Jamie Foxx, who played Electro in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, he has been confirmed as returning as Electro in Spider-Man 3. He also posted, I think it was on his Twitter. I don't have Twitter. I've never been on there. I believe it was on his Twitter, maybe on Instagram. He posted a piece of fan art that was showing his character along with Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland, their versions of Peter Parker all together. And that was quickly deleted, but we know how the internet works. And so that image has circulated around. The fact that he's been confirmed as returning as well, that gives us two different actors from two previous versions of Spider-Man that will be returning or who have already returned to Spider-Man 3. So that opens the door. Let's talk a little bit about Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi was the director of the Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire. Sam Raimi has spoken very candidly about the shortcomings of Spider-Man 3, the journey of making these three films, his relationship with Sony and the executives. On the Nerd podcast a few years ago, Sam Raimi was a guest, and he said on that podcast that he often thinks about Spider-Man 4, and he thinks of it as kind of like his unborn child. Now, this is me talking now, but it seems to me that it kind of haunts him that he was not able to make his Spider-Man 4. He is returning, not returning, but he is joining the MCU. He's directing Doctor Strange 2, and of course we know the full title of Doctor Strange 2 is Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. The fact that the multiverse is going to play a big role in Doctor Strange 2 opens the door to the possibility of having multiple versions of superheroes in the MCU later on. My understanding is that when Sam Raimi couldn't come to an agreement with Sony and ended up walking away from Spider-Man 4, it was at that point that Tobey Maguire said that he would not return if Sam Raimi was not attached to the project. So the fact that Sam Raimi is now a component of this, the fact that he's going to be involved in the MCU, gives Marvel a little bit of a bargaining chip, in fact, a very significant bargaining chip when it comes to trying to get Tobey Maguire back. So that's something to think about. I wanted to talk a little bit as well about what it would mean to me if this were to happen. I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man means the world to me. I have a spider tattooed on my body. As you can see, I've made this costume myself. I've got merchandise, action figures, artwork. I have met Tom Holland, and I have had an interaction with Andrew Garfield when I sent him some fan art that I made. I sent it to him online, and I had a brief correspondence with Andrew Garfield. But I can't really say that I've met him. But I love Spider-Man. When I was a little kid, I was more into like Disney and Mickey Mouse and sort of cute things like that. I remember the first time I saw Spider-Man. It was when the first movie came out, and my family went and saw it together. And I was so blown away to learn when I was watching that movie as a 10-year-old that Spider-Man is really just a kid. He's like me. He's seen as weak and defenseless and an easy target for his classmates pick on, and that really resonated with me. And as a result of that, he has played a big part in my life. I love this character. And because the Tobey Maguire film was the one that introduced me to the character, those movies are special to me. Now, nostalgia aside, I am fully prepared to defend those movies as being the most faithful adaptations of the character. I know everyone has their own opinion, um, but I think that they do a great job. And that includes Spider Man 3. And I would love to talk about that at a later time with you guys. But Spider Man 4 is what I call my genie movie. And what I mean by that is if a genie appeared to me and said, I will grant you the wish of having any movie be made that you want to be made. I will just magic it out of thin air. What movie do you want to have made? My answer has always been Spider Man 4. And so getting some sort of reunion with the Tobey Maguire version of this character, it would mean everything to me. I haven't let myself get too emotionally attached to this idea because I don't want to be disappointed. But I really do think that I would be brought to tears if I were to see Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man once again. That goes, hand in hand with the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I actually don't like those movies that much. But Andrew Garfield did a great job. It's, whatever shortcomings are included with those movies, whatever complaints and criticisms people have, none of those complaints, I don't think should be associated with or attributed to Andrew Garfield. He's an amazing actor, and he did a great job. In short, I don't think he got a fair shake. There is an interview, I think that the series is called Actors on Actors. There's an interview you can find here on YouTube where Andrew Garfield is talking with Amy Adams. And he speaks in that interview about how he signed up to play this character that he loved and meant so much to him. And he watched corporate executives chip away at the vision of the artists and the creative minds. And he talks about how it ended up breaking his heart seeing the changes that were made to the Amazing Spider-Man movies in the name of making more money, as opposed to really serving the story and telling a good story. I would love to have him back and give him another chance, especially if it were somebody like Sam Raimi directing. If Tobey signed on saying, yeah, I'll come back if Sam Raimi directs. Sam Raimi is an incredible director. He's very capable. And I believe that he would be able to work with Andrew Garfield and work with the other creative minds to really make something special. Why I think this might not happen is because there is a human component to this. Even though as Spider-Man fans we may feel like we're owed something, we're really not. Tobey Maguire doesn't owe me anything. He doesn't have to come back. Same with Andrew. These guys don't have to come back. They're not indebted to me, right? And Tobey Maguire specifically, he made his movies a long time ago. He has grown as a person. He's changed as a person, right? I mean, he's a father of 2 young kids. There's a big time commitment. Now, one thing that I've seen being kind of circulated around the internet is that the reason why this isn't confirmed yet that this is going to happen, this live action Spider-Verse or whatever we want to call it, is because Tobey Maguire is holding out. And the reports I've seen, now I don't know if this is true, this is all speculation, but the reports I'm seeing is that it's not a matter of money, it's a matter of Tobey wanting it to be worth his while. He wants a fair amount of screen time. In other words, he doesn't want to just have a cameo, a 10-second thing and be gone. If this is the case, I don't blame him. Even if it's just a small cameo, the time commitment, the travel, the costume fittings, all that kind of stuff means he would have to be away from whatever it is he's doing, be away from his kids, be away from other things that might be going on in his life. He's a person, you know. And the same goes for Andrew. Uh, Maybe Andrew wants to do other projects. Maybe Andrew doesn't want to come back. Maybe he feels like he doesn't want to revisit his version of the character. We don't know. We don't know what's going on in these people's heads. We don't know what their interest level is. But I do believe that the pieces are there, and I do believe that this has been built up over numerous years. Another thing that I wanted to touch on briefly is the concept, the idea, the possibility of having a Spider-Man 4, just a standalone, not connected to the MCU, not connected to Tom Holland or Andrew Garfield, and just having Sam Raimi come back and do a Spider-Man 4 with Tobey. Again, that would mean the world to me. I would love that. I don't think that's going to happen. And the reason why is because I think even though there are really like invested fans out there like myself who would totally eat it up and totally understand, there are a lot of people who are casual fans who are just part of the general audience who don't understand the backstory of how these movies are being made, the relationship between Marvel and Sony. They don't get what makes something part of the MCU, and like why this movie over here that has Marvel characters and isn't a part of the MCU. A lot of people just don't care enough to look into that stuff. And so I think for that reason, it would just cause a lot of confusion, and I don't really see Sony doing that. But maybe just the fact that there's a lot of this gossip circulating, maybe that gets Sony thinking, well, maybe the interest is there and maybe we just do it. So I really don't know what's going to happen. Nobody really does. But like I said, I think the pieces are all there. And I think that if Andrew Garfield and Tobey want to do it, I think that it could happen. And it would mean the world to me. I hope it happens. I would love it. Either a standalone Spider-Man 4 or kind of a live-action Spider-Verse type thing. I would love it. I would be there, midnight showing with this costume on. I would be so excited. It would mean the world to me. So that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of my version of my attempt of kind of tying everything together and distilling it and putting it out there and kind of giving my thoughts. So I would love to know what you guys think, what the possibility of this happening is, what your interest level is like, what you would want to see, or if you don't want to see this at all, if you think it's a bad idea, definitely let me know. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.